Hi, today we're going to be sewing a felt ball, and you're going to need 6 felt pieces. And then you need a needle and thread, and I always double the thread, especially if you're going to be doing this with a child. So we double the thread and tie a knot at the end, and then we take 2 pieces and you put them together, and we're going to start the needle on the inside, so between the 2 pieces, and that way the knot will get hidden. And then you're going to just do an overcast stitch, which goes like this. And the way I teach children to do this is, if a child was sewing this with a yellow piece and an orange piece, I would say into the yellow and out of the orange, into the yellow and out of the orange, into the yellow and out of the orange. You might also want to pin the 2 together to keep them from slipping apart like that. So into the yellow and out of the orange. And I would also tell them to keep their stitches small and to keep them side by side, just like a railroad track. Some children come to this very easily, and others have a hard time keeping a straight line and the stitches in order, and that's okay. Younger children, of course, will not have a good sense of one stitch after another, and they'll kind of stitch willy-nilly any which way, which is probably a good indication that they're too young for this project. But I would say a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and certainly a 6-year-old can do this. And we're going to sew all the way down the line till we get to the very end. So you're going to sew from here to here. So when you get to the end of your thread, and it should be about a little more than twice the length of your needle, if you can see that. Once you get to the end, you don't really have to tie a knot. You can simply slide the needle in and kind of between the pieces of felt. This only works for felt. Felt is very nice for this. And then I'm going to pull it out and snip it right along the edge of the felt. And I'm going to take and rethread my needle and continue. I wanted to say that when you do have a young child in working or next to you who isn't quite ready to do their own sewing, you can give them a piece of felt, a scrap piece, and a needle and thread, and let them sew along with you, even in their very willy-nilly way. Children love to do what their parents are doing, and I think it's can be the beginning of a real love of sewing if you let them do that. And of course they are not goal-oriented, so they'll be perfectly happy just sticking the needle in and out every which way. It will be very satisfying for them simply to be working near you and doing what they perceive to be exactly the same thing that you're doing. So I'm getting almost to the end here. And once I get to the end, I can see that these two pieces are not exactly the same shape. So I'm just going to trim this so that they are. Okay, so I've gotten to the end and now I have a little boat shape. So I'm going to take my next piece and I'm going to lay it alongside the yellow. Now I'm going to sew. Actually, I'm going to sew it alongside, I'm going to lay it alongside the orange. And if I had pins here, I would pin them together, but I don't, so. But I encourage you to do that. And now I would tell the child, into the green and out of the orange. Into the green and out of the orange. I find that when I say to small children, this is the best way to describe the orientation of the needle. If I tell them to sew around and around, they always end up going top into the bottom rather than bottom into the top. Children are developing their sense of spatial orientation and where they are, where their bodies are in space, and the capacity to even understand the spatial location of a needle is connected with their own unfolding and development of where their bodies are in space. So I find that when I give them very explicit instructions with the different colored pieces of felt, it's very helpful to them. You do have to keep reminding them. So into the green and out of the orange. Into the green and out of the orange. And of course, if they make a mistake and it goes into the orange and into the and out of the green, that's okay. It's always nice to have an opportunity to include mistakes and well value them, so it's not the end of the world if they don't get it quite right. So I haven't finished sewing the green one yet, but you can see that once the green one comes on, that is now a different level of boat, but we're making a ball, so let's keep sewing and see what happens. So I have sewn on 5 pieces, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about this last piece. And you can just to show you, this is opened up like this, and it's a little fan. And so the last one is going right in there. And I'm going to sew, the first side from one end all the way to the other, and then I'm going to be left with this final side to sew. And I'm only going to sew about halfway up the final side. Right? So the last piece goes into this little slot. And I'm going to sew this side from top to bottom. And then the final piece, which will close the whole thing, is only going to get sewn about halfway because we want to make sure that this little jingle bell fits inside. You don't have to put one of these in, but if you do, your ball will make a nice jingle bell sound. And this is actually a cat toy. I've tried just putting bells in, and once you stuff it with wool, it doesn't make such a nice sound anymore. So the little cat bells kind of protect the bell inside and add to the sound. Okay, so I put a pin in. Can you see that? And that helps keep the seam up. And I'm going to put in a couple of stitches, but first I'm going to let Otis out. Here you go, buddy. Okay. Back to stitching. I'm not going to stitch it all the way closed. I just want to stitch up maybe another quarter of the way up. And again, if you have a child that's sewing, depending on their how handy they are, how much experience they have sewing, and so on. And by now they probably have quite a bit if they've sewn these 6 pieces together. But sometimes I have to do this part because it's a little fiddly. So I'm gonna just sew, and I would say, if the child was sewing, I would say into the pink and out of the green, into the pink and out of the green. Again, it helps to orient them and gives very clear instructions on what's happening with their needle. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pull this needle out. So now this hole is quite a bit smaller, and I'm going to stuff a little bit more. It's definitely firming up, but there's still space for more wool. And I would say that I want to get as much wool in here as I can. I find that wool gets compacted, and with handling, you don't want your ball to collapse. And I'm just going to keep pushing that down. I'm kind of doing this with my finger as I go around with the wool, finding all the nooks and crannies where there isn't any wool, all the while making sure that the ball stays in the center. This is a very nice project for a child that is about to become a sibling, or has a young sibling, because it makes a really nice gift. And when a child can make a gift for someone, I just think that's very special. And if there's a culture of making presents, it's so much more meaningful than buying them. Okay, so once it's nice and full, you're gonna finish stitching that all the way closed. You might put a couple of extra stitches right in the center. Sometimes I put a little metallic star there, a sequin. You can put a little sequin right at the end there. There you have it, and it makes a nice sound. So I hope you enjoy this, and when you're done, send me some pictures of your ball. Bye.